When Pamela Hutchinson's good friend calls her for support, she makes the trip to Fort Meyers Beach without a second thought.
Fort Myers Beach is a beach town. It's where people come to blow off steam. It's also a party town.
But her one-day visit soon turns into a small vacation, which brings new friends and new house guests for the recent divorcee. But not everyone you meet on vacation can be trusted.
April 5th, 2018 is the last time anyone saw Pamela Hutchinson alive.
Whoever shot Pamela did so with the intent to kill.
The victim's purse has been rummaged through, and it appears that credit cards, cash, and a driver's license have been taken.
Some people are wolves in sheep's clothing. Who wait for the sun to go down to hunt for their next victim.
Fort Myers Beach is a 7-mile stretch of white sand located on Estero Island, Florida.
Tourists travel from around the world to relax on 7 miles of beautiful white sand beaches. Others spend their days hunting for seashells, fishing for world-class marlin, or making new friends on a dolphin tour before winding down with another breathtaking sunset. The population of around 7,000 people includes families, retirees, and seasonal snowbirds.
It also has a thriving community with restaurants and bars. It would be considered a great place to go for a vacation, to retire to, just a place in general to go and soak up the sun.
But if you travel 10 hours north, you'll arrive in Columbus County, North Carolina. Named after Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, Columbus County might not have the beaches of Fort Myers, but it is located right next door to the near 16,000-acre Green Swamp, a national natural landmark that's home to a number of endangered species and plant life, including the Venus flytrap. Columbus County is also where Pamela Hutchinson is born on September 1st, 1958. Pamela is born to parents Eugene Sellers and Sharon Watts and graduates from Fauquier High School in Warrenton, Virginia.
Pamela goes to the Virginia Commonwealth University School of Dentistry, but suddenly she decides to take a totally different path and ends up managing a car dealership.
Pamela Hutchinson lived in Virginia Beach. You know, she's a very kind, loving, genuine person.
Pamela is very successful and independent. People are attracted to her zest for life, her infectious energy.
She enjoys outdoor activities like fishing. She's very well respected in her community.
Eventually, Pamela meets James Hutchinson. They immediately bond over a shared love of fishing and compete in local fishing club tournaments. Pamela even wins a few. Pretty soon after, they marry and end up having 2 daughters.
But then, in 2016, after 20 years of marriage, Pamela asked James for a divorce.
Pamela's gone through some recent life changes. In fact, she recently divorced from her husband of 20 years, but the divorce itself seems to be pretty amicable.
James is shocked by the news. He still loves Pamela, but he's a nice enough guy that he doesn't want her to stay in a situation where she's no longer happy.
After the divorce, Pamela leaves Virginia Beach and moves to Florida in 2017. But then, on April 3rd, 2018, a friend from Fort Meyers Beach reaches out to Pamela after another tragedy.
Pamela's friend experiences a tragedy. Her husband passes away. She wants Pamela there to support her and to be there when they spread the ashes. So she travels to Fort Meyers Beach, which is near Sanibel Island, the location where they're going to spread the ashes.
Pamela's in Fort Myers, Florida on April 3rd, 2018 to help a friend. Her friend's husband passed away and she was there to help scatter the ashes. She was staying at a timeshare, but the plan was to return back home the next day.
But that afternoon, Pamela gets back to her condo, and even though she's supposed to leave right away, she decides to stick around a bit longer. There's so many things to do there. There's beautiful beaches. Why not hang around and see what's going to happen? So she goes out that night and she has a fantastic time.
Fort Myers Beach is a beach town. It's where people come to blow off steam, people from all ages and all walks of life. It's also a party town.
This is exactly the type of break that Pamela needed from her busy job. She's got a beautiful view of Matanzas Pass from her window. She can hear music from the nearby bars and restaurants. It just seems like paradise, an idyllic place to spend some time.
The amazing thing to Pamela that she commented on social media about was the fact that she got to see both the sunrise and the sunset from where she was staying.
The next day is April 4th, the day Pamela planned to go home. But she's having such a good time in Fort Myers Beach, she decides to extend her trip a little longer.
On April 5th, 2018, we know Pamela responded to a Facebook post, and around 5:30 or 5:15 p.m., she decided to actually spend one more day in Fort Myers Beach.
Even though this was a solemn occasion for her friend, now that that duty is over, Pamela has a chance to unwind and have some fun. She's newly divorced, her daughters are in college. She has no reason to hurry back home. She's in a beautiful location where there are 265 days of sun a year. Why not relax and enjoy it? The trip is going better than Pamela could have even expected. She's been going out every night, she's met some great people, made some new friends. This is exactly what she hoped would happen when she stayed.
But unfortunately for Pamela, her vacation in paradise would soon come to a tragic end.
On April 9th, 2018, the general manager of the facility actually goes into Pamela Hutchinson's room because there's a complaint that the water isn't working.
This manager is going from apartment to apartment testing the water. When she doesn't get an answer from Pamela's room, number 404, she lets herself in. The first thing that the manager notices is a vile smell. She then sees that the bathroom door is shut and towels seem to be jammed underneath. When she forces open the door, it's then that she discovers the horrific truth.
It's at that time they discover her body.
"59-year-old Pamela Hutchinson lies dead on her bathroom floor. Even to an average person, it's clear from the blood around Pamela's head that she's been murdered. But the question is, who would want to kill this kind-hearted woman having the time of her life on vacation, and why? Pamela Hutchinson is a successful and kind-hearted divorcee who's traveled to support her friend in Fort Meyers Beach, Florida. But after getting a glimpse of the beautiful Fort Meyers Beach sunsets from her timeshare condo, Pamela decides to turn her trip into a mini vacation and extends her stay one more day, then another. But on April 9th, 2018, the manager of her condo is horrified to discover Pamela's body in her bathroom.
7:46 p.m., April 5th, 2018, is the last time anyone saw Pamela Hutchinson alive.
The manager discovers Pamela's body and immediately calls 911.
911, what is your emergency? There's a dead body in one of the units.
But the news is already out among the building's tenants, including 20-year-old Troy Strom.
He described the smell like the smell of a dead animal, which clearly indicates that Pamela's body had been there for quite a while.
Responding to the 911 call, Major Crimes Unit Detective Rollins of the Fort Myers Beach Police and Medical Examiner Martin.
Investigators find that there's towels placed over Pamela's body and there's a pillow under her head. But the pillow has a bullet hole on it with soot around the hole, so it's obvious that this was used to muffle the shot.
It appears that towels and pillows have been positioned in such a way as to block air gaps under the door or around doors.
Martins, the medical examiner, does a full examination of Pamela's body and estimates that she's been dead for at least 4 days.
It's determined that the cause of Pamela's death is a gunshot wound to the torso.
With all of the evidence around the crime scene, Pamela's death is officially ruled a homicide. But why would someone want to kill Pamela? Detectives continue their investigation by searching Pamela's condo.
They also note that in the kitchen area, the victim's purse has been rummaged through, and it appears that credit cards, cash, and a driver's license have been taken.
Is this murder a robbery gone wrong? Or could the killer be looking to steal Pamela's identity?
Also, at this point of the investigation, investigators discover that the victim's vehicle is gone from the parking lot, and there's no evidence of any keys located in the room.
Detective Rollins calls in a be on the lookout, or BOLO, on Pamela's car, both the description and her license plate. Because whoever has her car likely is the person who killed her.
BOLO is an instrument used by police agencies across North America, really, to fan information out across the country. This way, other jurisdictions are aware of ongoing investigations where suspects may need to be identified, and that local jurisdictions don't have any luck in determining who that person might be.
Detectives speak with the condo manager to learn more about Pamela's stay at the condo.
The manager provides an important clue. She tells detectives that she noticed Pamela wearing a lot of gold rings and using a credit card. Since these items weren't recovered from the crime scene, it's likely that the killer took them as well.
But what the manager doesn't know is who could have gotten into Pamela's room.
At times, homicides are committed by people close to the victim. Rollins asks Virginia Beach police to go and pay a visit to Pamela's ex-husband, Jim, and question him about the murder.
When James is informed of her death, he's devastated. He never wanted to divorce Pamela in the first place and was still in love with her. This is the worst possible news.
Jim's co-workers can say that he was at work during the time of Pamela's death. There is not enough time for him to go to Fort Meyers Beach and back again, ruling him out as a suspect in Pamela's murder. Detective Rollins notes that everyone who knew Pamela loved her. Even her ex-husband holds no grudge. Not only that, she's having a great time at her vacation. Is it possible that she met someone at Fort Meyers Beach?
At Pamela's autopsy, the examiner sees no signs of struggle on the body and no clear defensive marks.
Pamela Hutchinson had 2 gunshot wounds, one to her shoulder and one that entered through the left lower lobe of her lung, went up through her chest, through her esophagus, right atrium of her heart, and out the right upper lobe of her lung. She had a lot of internal bleeding into her intestines, her kidneys were pale, so she died of extreme blood loss due to a gunshot wound.
She was probably shot in the shoulder first, which knocked her to the ground, and then she was shot at a downward angle towards her heart.
This isn't a crime of passion. Whoever shot Pamela did so with the intent to kill.
Detectives pay another visit to the condo manager to pull the building's video surveillance to see if they can find evidence of the killer.
On April 3rd, there's video footage of Pamela's white Acura TL pulling into the village marina.
We can see Pamela coming and going from her room quite a bit on the day before. And then on April 4th, we see her going to her room with a mysterious blonde woman.
Video footage shows Pamela and an older woman in her mid-50s walking towards her condo. Later that day, they go to a restaurant together.
The next night, we see Pamela returning with the same blonde woman. But at 8:34, the mysterious woman leaves Pamela's room by herself. She looks really upset, like she might even be crying.
They watch Pamela and this woman walk into the room together, and then this woman emerges alone and crying.
Over the next 12 hours, the woman makes multiple trips to Pamela's room, exiting with luggage and garbage bags full of unknown material.
At 12:42 p.m. on April 6, 2018, the woman leaves the apartment and gets into a white Cadillac Escalade with Minnesota plates.
Shortly after that, detectives locate footage of this woman stealing Pamela's car. From the security footage, they add photos of Pamela's car to their nationwide bolo.
Since no one else is seen entering or leaving Pamela's room, it appears that the sweet-looking woman probably befriended Pamela, stole her belongings, and killed her.
This mysterious woman's vehicle has a Minnesota license plate, which turns the investigation towards Minnesota. Rollins receives a call from the Minnesota Lee County Sheriff's Department.
Sergeant Foraker calls Detective Rollins and says, "I have crucial information for you. I know the name of your killer."
Pamela Hutchinson is a successful and kind-hearted divorcee, having the time of her life on vacation in Fort Meyers Beach, only to be found shot in her condo bathroom. But after Fort Myers Beach Detective Rollins discovers a strange woman exiting Pamela's room with tears in her eyes shortly after her murder, he's shocked to get a phone call from Sergeant David Foraker in Minnesota, who claims to know the identity of the killer.
As it happens in this particular case, Dodge County detectives recognize the picture as being that of Lois Reese, and an officer signs a sworn affidavit identifying Lois Reese in the photo.
Sergeant Foraker reveals that Lois Reese isn't the kindly, grandmotherly woman she appears to be. In fact, she's wanted by the Dodge County Sheriff's Office in Minnesota for felony theft and perhaps the homicide of her husband. "55-year-old Lois Reese is born on February 28, 1962 in Rochester, Minnesota. She attends school up to the 11th grade.
Lois Ann Reese, she's been living in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota with her husband David.
Lois marries David Reese, a worm and bait farmer, and they were happily married for 25 years. They had 3 children together and celebrated their arrival of 5 grandchildren.
In 2012, Lois was actually appointed guardian of an older disabled sister.
But despite her cheery, blonde, grandmotherly appearance, Lois Reese also has a dark side. When both Lois and David Reese stopped showing up to work or interacting with their friends and loved ones in March of 2018, many suspected that something was terribly wrong.
David Reese's business partner reports that he hasn't been seen at the business for about 2 weeks, and he calls the police.
On March 23, 2018, David Reese's business partner called the Blooming Prairie Police after 16 days of him failing to contact him or appear at his job.
When they go to the home to check, they've discovered the body through the window. It appears that he's been dead for a few days. Also appears there are a number of gunshot wounds.
The couple's 2005 Cadillac Escalade also appears to be missing.
Lois Reese, David Reese's wife, isn't around, so she becomes a person of interest, and it's known now that police want to speak with her about her husband's homicide. Lois is picked up on video surveillance camera footage at a gas station in Iowa about 40 miles away. In following this lead, investigators learned that she asked for directions of the clerk at the gas station. She was also seen to have made a transfer of about $10,000 from her husband's business account into her own account, and she wrote some large checks, one of them for the amount of $11,000 to herself. Additionally, she was found to have cashed 2 checks in the amount of $8,500. This was on the same day the body of her husband was found.
With Lois Reese on the run, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the U.S. Marshals Service tried their best to locate her.
On April 2nd, 2018, police get a tip that Lois could be in Florida from a woman named Therese Tess Coster, who claims to know Lois personally.
Tess explains that she's known Lois and David Reese for 10 years. Tess goes on to say that she'd heard the news about Lois being on the run, and when she saw her, she was terrified that Lois had come to kill her and her husband too.
And they acknowledged each other, but Lois acted strangely and left.
Tess thinks that since Lois obviously knew about the rental properties, she probably approached them hoping for a chance to hide out.
She later found out that Lois had in fact knocked on one of the doors of a rental property she had, claiming to be staying there.
On its own, this information wasn't much to go on. But Sergeant Foraker's luck was about to change.
Sergeant Foraker receives one of the bolo photos and recognizes that it's Lois Reese driving the stolen Acura. And he puts it all together in his head and contacts Detective Rollins.
Detectives also noticed similarities between the two murders.
The MO of David's murder is very similar to that of Pamela Hutchinson. Both victims were shot in a bathroom with what appears to be a small caliber handgun, perhaps a .22, and then were draped in a towel.
Afterwards, Lois stole her victim's personal identification, along with her cash and credit cards.
But why did Lois Reese target Pamela Hutchinson?
Beyond the financial motive, when detectives look at the picture of the victim and the killer side by side, they notice there's a bit of a resemblance.
Pamela, in fact, looked very similar to Lois. Investigators believe that Lois was in fact using Pamela Hutchinson's identification and her credit cards.
The challenge for detectives now is not only has Lois committed another murder, but she has a new car, new identification, and a 4-day head start. She could be anywhere.
This murder case has turned into a nationwide manhunt. Lois Reese is on the run for the murders of Pamela Hutchinson in Fort Meyers Beach, Florida, and husband David Reese in Minnesota. After shooting Pamela in her condo bathroom, Lois Reese stole Pamela's vehicle to go on the run, using her identification and credit cards to avoid authorities. Meanwhile, law enforcement and U.S. Marshals from around the country are working together to capture Lois Reese in a nationwide manhunt.
Now Lois is a double murder fugitive on the run, and we have no idea where she is.
One of the ways that detectives will track Lois is to monitor her financial statements.
The day after the murder, Lois is caught by Wells Fargo's surveillance cameras withdrawing $5,000 from Pamela's account.
Authorities have also uncovered evidence of Lois's history of financial troubles.
It turns out that Lois Reese has a bit of a gambling problem, to say the least. She's already lost $500,000 of inheritance money, and this could possibly be the motive for what she did to Pamela.
She also has a history of writing undocumented checks to herself out of her disabled sister's bank account. Records show that it totals approximately $78,000, but no charges have ever been filed.
With evidence of her financial history confirmed, investigators double their efforts on finding Lois Reese.
Through bank records, the police discover that the day after the murder, Lois stayed at a hotel in Ocala, Florida. She stays one night and orders room service and a movie. The receipt for the room service was signed with the name Pamela Hutchinson. Afterwards, Lois uses another one of Pamela's credit cards to extend her stay for another 3 days.
On April 7th, 2018, Pamela's credit card was used to make 3 $500 withdrawals at an ATM machine. Surveillance photos show Lois Reese making the transactions and still wearing the same shirt and hat and driving Pamela's car.
All indications are that Lois has left Florida, however, and that she's on the move westward. Louisiana State Police indicate that they've spotted Pamela's vehicle in that area. The same thing for Texas. Everything in the investigation up to this point leads to the fact that Lois has taken Pamela's vehicle and is traveling westward.
Knowing that Lois is traveling across state lines, detectives are deeply concerned. If she runs out of money, could somebody else be in danger? Could Lois potentially kill again?
Detectives continue searching and also find more evidence tying Lois to her crimes.
On Monday, April 9th, 2018, a white Cadillac Escalade bearing Minnesota plates happens to be found about a mile away from Fort Myers Beach, Florida. This vehicle matches the color and description of a vehicle that Lois was last seen driving. It's also believed by investigators that the weapon used to kill Pamela is the same weapon that was used to kill David Reese.
As the case winds on, Lois begins to get some lovely attention in the international and national press. They call her the Granny Killer for her sweet grandmotherly appearance and Losing Streak Lois for her gambling.
What has become evident is that Lois Reese is all over the place in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. There's video surveillance of her going to ATMs, going to hotels, being seen walking on the street. Her vehicle is located there. Also nearby in Ocala, Florida, Lois has been spotted there, and it just so happens that Pamela Hutchinson's credit card was used around that same time.
Then, On April 19, 2018, the intense media coverage leads to a break in the case.
These images of Lois, the suspect in 2 homicides, they're now public. They're everywhere. And the manager of Dirty Al's, a bar restaurant in South Padre Island, recognizes her from the photo as she's sitting in the establishment. Unfortunately, she's gone by the time they get there.
South Padre Island is another resort town, this time on the Gulf of Mexico. Police think that if Lois is eating there, she's probably staying around there too. They even have plainclothes detectives starting to search other nearby restaurants.
Finally, on April 20th, 2018, after a month-long manhunt, police get the break they've been waiting for.
Police are contacted by a witness who works at a hotel restaurant who recognized Lois from the media coverage. Deputy marshals storm the hotel and find Lois in the lounge socializing, and they take her into custody for the murder of Pamela and David.
It's a bit surreal that Lois is relaxing, laughing, having a great time at these restaurants when she's being hunted nationwide. But from Fort Meyers Beach to South Padre Island, it's almost like she wanted to live a life of luxury before spending the rest of her life in prison.
In Lois's hotel room, the investigators find a 9mm and a .22 caliber handgun. As well, investigators find a black bag containing firearm paraphernalia, bullets, a holster, duct tape, and rubber gloves.
There's Pamela's checkbook, her 4 credit cards. It's almost if all the evidence of Lois's crimes is right there in that hotel room.
Before investigators can even interview Lois, she invokes the right to retain a lawyer and remains silent.
They're not going to get a single word out of her, so they turn to her cell phone, where they find startling new evidence of a potential 3rd victim in Lois's killing spree.
Lois Reese has been arrested for the murders of her husband, David Reese, of Blooming Prairie, Minnesota, and tourist Pamela Hutchinson in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. But after confiscating Lois' cell phone, detectives uncover evidence that indicates Lori could have a 3rd victim.
Detectives discover text messages that show that Lois probably befriended a South Padre Island woman named Bernadette Mathis, who was 65.
Much like Pamela, Lois befriends Bernadette at the bar. But Bernadette, she's out of it. She's had too much to drink.
They planned to have dinner the next day on April 20th, but the dinner plans were called off when the bartender informed Bernadette that he'd seen that Lois had been arrested.
Well, of course, it's just speculation at this point, but detectives are left to wonder if perhaps Bernadette could have become another victim of Lois Reese.
In December of 2019, Lois pled guilty in a Florida courtroom to the murder of Pamela Hutchinson, as well as theft and other charges. In August of 2020, she pled guilty to the murder of her husband. She's currently serving 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole.
But what authorities still don't know is what started Lois Reese's crime spree in the first place.
There are many elements to this series of crimes. It all seems to have begun with an argument that ensued between Lois and her husband, David. It would appear that David offered Lois a firearm and suggested she take her life. She then decided to kill David with the firearm. And at that point is when she took off from Minnesota and left for Florida. I don't know that anybody would have thought initially that Lois was capable of murder, let alone twice. Once she got to Florida, she looked for somebody who appeared the same as her so that she could continue to run. And that's when she found Pamela. And it appears the only motive for the murder of Pamela Hutchinson was the fact that she looked similar to Lois. Lois wanted to keep running from the law. Pamela was her way of doing that. Lois stole Pamela's car, she stole her credit cards, she stole her identity, and she continued to run from the law. She was eventually found in Texas, where everything was put together.
One of the most insidious things about these murders is that Lois lashed out at people who trusted her. Pamela thought she'd made a new friend. She was just having a great time, and Lois murdered her just for her identification. She left behind children and lots of people who loved her and mourned her. Lois's greed drove her to murder 2 people, and now she'll be behind bars for the rest of her life.
Some people are capable of terrible things. You can't just look at someone and say, well, that's a good person or that's a bad person. You don't know. But by the same token, you can't go through life looking over your shoulder. You have to live life in the moment. And to say, be wary of strangers is a bit overwhelming because strangers are everywhere.
But while Lois Reese is a monster, the person we should remember is Pamela Hutchinson, a woman who was loved by so many of those who knew her, who lived life fearlessly on her own terms. But while that fearlessness may have led to her untimely death, her spirit of adventure is a powerful reminder that life can end at any moment, and to try to enjoy the time we do have.